from nearly 200 political parties, coming from 27 countries and speaking 23 languages. It's very difficult to deliberate in such a situation and to be able to build majorities. Because this is the main point of the history of the European Parliament. European Parliament was given powers, but the condition was always being able to find majorities. And here again, we can make a parallel with what's happening in the Parasur. Because for some important decisions, the Parasur will be asked to find the majority, not of people voting, but the majority of the members, which is very different. And the European Parliament, back to the Single European Act in '87, was given some power. You were able to gain power over the legislative process, but with two conditions. First condition is condition of delay. You have only, for instance, 3 months to make your choice on that proposal. After 3 months, if you are not able to give an advice, a point of view, then we consider that you are okay. So that was the first important constraint. And the second important constraint was to say, you can vote amendments, for instance, but only at the majority of the members. And this is very important because in the European Parliament, it's very seldom that all the MEP are able to come to a meeting, because at national level there may be some special situation, elections, things or so, and it's not always easy for MEPs coming from a country which is on the periphery of the European Union to reach Strasbourg or Brussels to come for a meeting. That means that even if there are only 500 people in the room when the European Parliament is voting, if the European Parliament wants to have an influence over a decision, it must have the majority of its members. This is 393. So mainly the European Parliament is asked to find very large majority within it, and this is very difficult because there is such a political heterogeneity, national heterogeneity, and also MEPs that are not sharing the same conception of politics, the same conception of what is a parliament. They're hardly agreeing on anything. And that's the reason why political groups are so important, because political groups is a way to overcome that heterogeneity, is a way to overcome the national division, and to be able to make the European Parliament speak. And if you look at the history of the European Parliament, what is really striking is that the European Parliament was able to find those majorities. Because when it was decided to give some power to the European Parliament, some representatives of member states were not happy with that story, especially the French, saying, oh, European Parliament is stupid body, those guys are just demagogues, we don't want European Parliament to gain too much power in the legislative process. So they proposed constraining delays and large majority, saying they won't be able to make it, and so we'll be free of it. But this does not appear because the MEPs decided to change the way the European Parliament works in order to be able to gain those majorities. And so that rationalization process is relying much on the existence of those political groups that are the main organs which are able to simplify the situation inside the European Parliament and to create those large coalition or large majorities. So as I told you, beginning of the 50s, there were at the very beginning 3 groups: Christian Democrats and Socialists, and a small groups of liberals. And Christian Democrats and Socialists were mainly in favor of European integration, because European integration was a result of the negotiation and discussion between Christian Democrats and Socialists. And the liberals, they were a bit more critical, saying, okay, this is too centralized, etc., we don't like it so much. In '65, we had a 4th group. The 4th group was the French Gaullists. They decided to leave the groups of the liberals and to create their own groups, and they started to be very critical of the European integration process because they didn't like the federal trend of it. In '74, there was a 5th group where there was a group of communists, and they were also quite critical towards European integration, saying it was too much relying on the idea of market and they didn't like it. After '89, we had a group of Greens that are playing a very important role inside the European Parliament, and it's really interesting to see that ecologists and Greens are more powerful at the European level than at the national level, and really a strong group inside the European Parliament. And then in the 90s we had more Eurosceptics being elected because European Union started to have some problems with public opinion, and so people today are voting quite a lot for Eurosceptics to the European election. And within the 785 we have around 150 MEPs that are very critical against European integration. Some want to change it, and some want just to stop with that idea. So if you can just change the slide, please. Okay. Here is the composition of the European Parliament. It's the first election in '75. And what is really interesting to see here is that we always have the same groups. There is a very important stability of the composition. It does not appear like that, but I will show you. And this is something quite surprising, because you have elections are national elections in each country along national rules, and you always find the same groups. So here in purple, you have the socialist group. That was for a long time the leading group, and for now 10 years they are only the second group in number. Today, socialist group is around 200 members. In light blue here we have the Christian Democrats, with a group of the European People's Party. Here's the names are in French. And so they were certain for a long time, and today they are leading with today nearly 280 members, which is very large. Then we have third group, those liberals that exist since the very beginning. And today we have a group with liberals and some federalists that are working together. We have the Greens that are in a common group with some regionalists or people of that kind. We have here in red the communists that exist since '79 and are always an important group inside the European Parliament. We have here one group which is called Independent Democracy, of people that are quite critical against European integration, and another group which is called Union of for a nation for a Europe of nations, which are really Eurosceptic and following a bit the goals of the beginning. So today in the European Parliament we have 7 groups. We never had more than 10, and it's really interesting to see that the number of groups is really stable, because the number of member states increased a lot. The number of political parties represented in the European Parliament increased a lot, with 180 today, and we have only had 7 groups, which is not too much. And we have 2 groups here that are around 500 members. So there is no split of forces inside the European Parliament, and a situation which is quite simple and quite stable over time. Sometimes the names of the group change a bit, but it has no real impact. So, how can we explain the fact that the European Parliament is able to really exert its power, is able to find the majorities, is able to respect the delays, etc., etc.? The first thing to say is that there is no stable majority or no stable coalition inside the European Parliament. Because if you want to have an impact over legislation and budget, you need those 393 voices. And the largest group is today 280. And they are not able to get more than 230 in the room, so there still is 150 voices to get a majority. So the story of the European Parliament, in fact, is building a coalition on each text. Each day they must start again to find a coalition on a text, and when a proposal of the Commission is coming to the European Parliament, nobody never knows what will happen.